Hi, everyone. My name is Elena Park. I am delighted to welcome you to the fifth In Conversation With in the San Francisco Opera's In Song series. And I'm delighted that it's with Amina Edris. We shot in Cairo, her native Cairo, in August. And you know the saying where it takes a whole village to raise a child? It took the whole entire extended Khalil Edris family to make this feature, as well as a production team on the ground. And so let's just dive right in. I want to welcome Amina Edris, who stayed up late in Strasbourg, where she is between performances. Amina, please join me.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
I know you sang Micaela last night, and I know you're singing Micaela tomorrow. So thank you for taking this time to sit down and talk about your episode.
No, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here. Oh, there's my dog. Miles is making an appearance.
He's very welcome. Well, you know, when we first talked about doing your episode after Matthew Shilvak and Greg Henkel told me all about you, I was so excited because I listened to clips and heard about you from your singing colleagues and people at San Francisco Opera. And I remember when we first started talking about this episode, gosh, it was in the winter in deep COVID. And we didn't know what we'd be able to pull off, but you immediately knew what would be essential to be able to tell your story.
Yeah, I mean, you were very, I don't know, I think you sort of guided me through the points that you really wanted me to talk about throughout my life. And that sort of just like led me straight to it and allowed me to just sort of give you exactly the key moments, I think, that just form who I am and make my story.
Well, you come from such a close and, as you say, boisterous family. So I think, why don't we just share a clip right off the bat so we can see the world from which you sprung. This gives us a view of your grandma and your uncle.
Let's do it.
وما تخضتش من الميكروفون ولا من المزيكا، أكنها واحدة متدربة، واحدة. أنا بقيت أقول يعني في سري ما شاء الله على البنت، حتى يعني كنت خايفة عليها من كتر ما هي يعملوا تبقى ماشية تتخبط زي اللي بيعمل على الإيقاع برجلها، كانت ماشية وبتغني وهي في سن صغير خالص. المنظر ده لدلوقتي في خيالي.
فحسيت إنها هيجي منها جامد. قلت لهم يا جماعة أمينة المفروض إنها تخش في الفن.
So my uncle was really the only connection I had to any classical music knowledge. He just adored Rachmaninoff, and he really also loved Maria Callas.
Almost immediately, Amina, when I asked you your relationship to song and how you became a musician, you immediately started talking about your uncle because you were making music with him from really when you were just a very, very small child. Talk to us about that.
Well, actually, what I think is funny, and I can't believe I'm going to be saying this on a live on a live video, but I think one of the very first things I said to you, and it was repeated several times in the video when we were shooting, was that when I was young, every time I would go to the bathroom, everyone in my family would hear me just singing these crazy songs while I'm in the bathroom. And it just became this like funny story that everybody in my family would share. And because my uncle would constantly hear me just making noise all the time, he was the first person that was like, okay, that's clearly, you know, she clearly has a voice, she has an ear, she can hear a melody and sort of repeat it straight away. Let me sort of introduce her to music. Let me teach her some songs. He would pick up the oud and just immediately start playing, and he would teach me all these sorts of old school Arabic songs, or we would watch my favorite black and white movies. And the typical sort of structure of old Arabic movies, they were almost kind of like musicals, kind of like the old black and white movies of like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers type style, that are infused of, you know, acting and singing. And we would sit and watch these movies, and immediately I'm humming whatever song was playing, and he would be right there to encourage me, you know, to keep singing. And my auntie had an upright piano at my grandmother's house, and again he would immediately open the piano for me and just be like, okay, do you want to sort of try and put the tune together, like the melody that you just heard? And I would kind of just like plonk the notes on the piano and try and match what I heard. So every musical memory that I have, it is always connected to him. And I just think that's really special. I think that's what made me really emotional watching this video back, those moments that I'm singing with him, and you know, those moments that we're sharing together. It's almost like full circle for me.
You know, you mentioned in the clip we just saw that he was your connection into the classical music world. How much is classical music heard, you know, in Cairo or in Egypt more generally?
You know, honestly, I have no clue. I don't really know how he was introduced to Maria Callas, or specifically Rachmaninoff. He's obsessed with Rachmaninoff. He had all these like tapes that he would play at home all the time. Those like cassette tapes. I'm not really sure like of the influence of classical music in general in Egypt, but for whatever reason he was very connected to it, and I'm grateful for that, because otherwise I wouldn't have had that introduction.
And interestingly, I mean, we're going to see your uncle's chops in a little bit, but he is an architect, right? That's how he makes his trade. And yet he just is so musical and has a great ear, and obviously was able to spot that you had something special that he should encourage as much as possible.
He's always sort of been incredibly creative. I think, you know, I never quite got to ask him this, but I think if he would go back in time, he would probably go to the Conservatory of Music, Cairo, and really focus more on music than architecture. I think that was probably his real love that he didn't get a chance to explore. But he's always been super, super creative, and he does these beautiful oil paintings. He also taught me how to draw. So it's not just music. He wasn't my my creative force just from a musical point of view, but also he taught me how to sketch and draw and paint. His beautiful oil paintings in his home, and I wish actually we got to feature some of those in the video, but I totally forgot to even mention this. All round, you know, artsy, which I love.
Yeah. And when we were talking about, well, what music would you want to share, you immediately started talking about Kulthum. So for those who don't know her music and who she is, can you tell us a little bit about her and the choice?
Well, she is huge in the Arab world. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. She was a child prodigy, and became incredibly famous for her very deep contralto sound. And she really, I feel, sort of put Egypt on the map, musically speaking. She made such a huge impact on the classical Arabic musical world. And if you look her up on YouTube or anywhere online, you would notice that her songs are usually 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour long. They're just like huge, poetic songs. It's almost as if she was singing sort of a one-woman opera sort of thing. It's almost like she's singing a libretto, really, a very poetic libretto. And she was powerful. Her lyrics were incredibly powerful. Her voice was unbelievably powerful. I mean, my uncle always has this joke. he seems to believe that her voice was that some scientists measured her voice against Maria Callas's voice, and Kulthum won. I don't know where he got this information from, but he seems to be very adamant that it's fact and it's true. But I think, you know, every Arab child grows up knowing who Kulthum was. Whether or not you grow up to appreciate her music, that's a different story, but you know who she is. And that says a lot, I think.
I recently saw Michael Tilson Thomas conduct at the Phil, and I mentioned to Joshua's husband that I had just been in Cairo with you, and immediately he said, well, do you know the music of Kulthum? And I said, absolutely, I do now. And Amina picked a song to share, because I just know she looms so large and had such charisma. So talk a little bit about this song that you decided to share and record with your uncle.
Well, the name of the song is called Ghanili Shway Shway, which means sing for me a little. And it just talks about how music is the soul of life. And I thought, oh my gosh, there is literally no better song that I could pick of hers that would be so fitting specifically for my story, given the fact that, you know, when you were asking me about my life in between growing up in Egypt and then moving to New Zealand, and a huge part of how I became so connected to music was because of the fact that I was an immigrant that felt really stuck between two cultures and not really knowing which direction to go to. And when I say that, I mean, you know, being an 11, 12-year-old girl in New Zealand, really wanting to immerse herself in the New Zealand culture and get to know it, but also, you know, at home, my parents were very, very Egyptian, and they wanted us to retain our culture and not let go of it. And because of being stuck, well, I don't think I was stuck, but at the time I felt like I was stuck in between the two cultures, not really knowing which direction to go into. At that point is when I just threw all of my energy into music. I couldn't really make friends in school because of this very reason, because my parents were super strict. I wasn't allowed to go to, you know, sleepovers or socialize with girls from my high school. I went to an all-girls high school. So I wasn't able to connect with them in any way outside of school, and therefore they were not interested in having me as part of their friendship circle. And in turn, the only way I could make friends with people, or I could feel like I was sort of belonging anywhere, was when I joined the orchestra to play the trombone, or when I joined the barbershop quartet, or when I joined the choir. So music all of a sudden sort of became, I don't know, that place where I felt kind of secure. Anytime I was doing any musical activity, I could actually be surrounded with people and feel like I had friends. But it also allowed me, it gave me this platform to express and not be as shy, and allow myself to sort of just be and blossom. So circling back to the Kulthum song about singing and music being, you know, the soul of life, that was the first song that immediately popped into my head when you asked me what song I wanted to sing in Arabic, because I felt like I couldn't find anything else that would better describe my story.
Is it difficult, since you've trained now so devotedly in opera, to sing that style of music and all the melismas and the things that are, you know, beautiful and foreign to my ear for the most part?
Not so much, actually. If anything, I feel like because I grew up with this Arabic music that is very fluid, I feel like it really helped my classical training, especially in music that requires agility or you know, these super fast coloratura passages and things like that. All of a sudden, I remember when I first met my current voice teacher, Cesar Ulloa, he was like, why is your coloratura so good? It's so clean. He said, it's probably from all the Arabic music I grew up singing when I was a child. It's already, I don't know, it's ingrained in my body somehow, that facility. And so if anything, I feel like the Arabic singing helped my operatic singing and my classical music singing.
Oh, wow. Fascinating. Well, let's see a little clip of you and your uncle. And we are in this Dahab Island Palace, which is off the Nile. And you have to take a boat, and it's incredibly scenic, and it looks historic, but I think it was built in 1994 and it's owned by a prince. And so we were able to shoot there. And I saw yesterday, I was doing some research that you can rent it on Airbnb. You'll see it's incredibly scenic. But anyway, if we could see a little clip of the Benili Shwe Shwe. Oh my gosh. When I watched that, I have to laugh because, you know, when we were first talking and you were telling me about your uncle, and first of all, because we didn't know if we'd be able to travel to Cairo, you or me. And we talked about we have to do it on Zoom, you and he collaborating together, which would have been, you know, a little disappointing versus what we were able to do. But as you know, I said, are you sure your uncle is going to be comfortable? Should we get a professional musician? And I was very, very nervous. And you were like, no, he's got it. It's fine. It's fine. And then when I met him, he's a supremely confident being. It's like he's on tour all the time or something with the cameras and stuff.
I love extremely confident. You know, this feature could be called In Song, featuring Amina Edris. He would love it. I mean, who am I? Who cares about me?
Well, I see that it's in your genes, but it is funny because, you know, we were like, okay, and you sent me a clip, and I thought, oh, he's a great musician. But then when you see him in person, he loves the camera, I have to say, and I think he could have made a whole other career, most certainly. You told me that you got emotional at one point because you were just quoting the lines, singing is what breathes life into the soul. But you said that there was a point where you were singing that line about the healing power of music being more powerful than any doctor's medicine, and you looked at him and you got a little teary. It must be an incredible experience because he's infused your childhood with music, then to come back so many years later, and then San Francisco Opera sends, you know, the resources for a crew to capture you two making music together. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting emotional right now, just thinking about it and thinking about that moment, because I remember just after we shot, just after we stopped, I said to you, oh, I had to look away a little bit because it was starting to be emotional for me, just thinking about what I was singing and making eye contact with him and realizing that he's there and we're doing this thing. It just all felt very surreal, you know, because he's just had such an impact on my life, and just the way that he I'm gonna cry now. But he's just had such an impact on my life, and I'm so grateful for him, and for him like allowing me to be encouraging me to just be me and follow my heart when it came to pursuing a career in music. And so when it came to that point where we were sitting together and we were actually making, music together, I was like, holy moly, like we're actually doing this. It's not like we're just jamming on the couch in my grandmother's home and someone's, filming us on an iPhone. There's a whole production team, and we're doing this for the San Francisco Opera, and it really made me emotional, and it filled my heart with so much joy to share this moment with him. And I'm really, really grateful that I have this memory forever.
I have to say, your family is so large and loving, and they're so proud of you. We had a rehearsal at one of Amina's auntie's place, because it's hard to find a piano to rehearse with, and she and Amina and Amir Awad, our lovely pianist who's based in Alexandria, shot there. And then we did the interview where we saw your grandmother and your uncle on the couch at another auntie's, and your mom got us all food for the crew, and your two fabulous cousins just stage managed and translated for me and everything. And I just think that they're so happy that you've gone out into the world and that you're making a career in music. And then as soon as you're there, they want to see you all the time. They want you to come back all the time, but they're so proud. And it was just beautiful to be around them for those few days.
I don't get to see them often, and they've never actually really watched me perform in classical music. They've never watched me in an opera or in a concert live, and I don't get to share these moments a lot with them. And even though this was not them watching me in a classical performance, we were making this feature, and I'm very grateful that they were able to be a part of it. And I actually don't tell them enough just how much I love them and I appreciate them, and if I can have them travel with me everywhere, I would.
Well, I was looking at the posts, the comments on your Instagram, and they were all just your fans, and who are everywhere, but your cousins were like, oh my gosh, just post the thing already. San Francisco Opera, it's been a couple of months.
Well, shout out to Mo and Yusuf.
Yes. Who
بحبكم جدا جدا جدا, وحبيبة وفريدة وزينة وهنا وملك وليلي, everybody. I'm missing people I know. They're gonna kill me. And Mariam.
Well, actually, you know what? We're gonna see a little clip. Let's go back into when you were growing up, and then we see a little bit of your family. And Miles has come back for more pets.
Both of my parents worked in tourism. I was a very lucky child to have grown up with parents that were in that industry, that allowed me to experience my country in a way that I guess not everybody gets to see it. Unfortunately, there was an attack in front of the Hatshepsut temple, a terrorist attack, and it really had a huge impact on Egyptian tourism, which in turn had a very negative impact on my parents' source of income. They worked in a very niche business that's very specific and very tailored to one thing. So they weren't able to branch out and do different jobs. And so they started thinking, okay, maybe we will consider immigration. So we end up in New Zealand. I was 10 or 11 years old, and it was a huge culture shock. I was used to the hustle and bustle of Cairo and always surrounded by a ton of people. And all of a sudden it was very quiet, very peaceful, very beautiful, but very different. When I was in Egypt, I grew up speaking French and Arabic simultaneously. And we only started learning bits of English just before we moved to New Zealand. So it took me a while to adjust. and for my parents to find a balance in a new culture, yet to retain our existing one.
We got to see your parents, and I know you and your brother grew up in New Zealand, and I got a chance to meet your mother because she was in Cairo at the time of our taping, which was a real pleasure. You grew up in the heart of the tourist industry. As you were saying, your parents worked in tourism. Your mom led French tours and your dad had shops. Is that right?
My mom was a tour guide for French tourists. And my dad sort of had a couple of shops on some cruise ships. That was before I was born. And then he was, a partner in some jewelry stores at the Hilton Hotel and then the Movenpick Hotel. It's a very heavily, involved in tourist center careers, both of them.
And I know that you made that huge transition to New Zealand. And because we couldn't fit everything in that we wanted to, can you just share your only association with New Zealand when you found out that your family was moving to New Zealand?
Yes. So in Egypt, we cook a lot with ghee. In most Arab cultures, we cook with ghee instead of butter or olive oil. It's usually ghee, and I believe New Zealand is a huge exporter of ghee, and one of the famous brands in most Arab countries is called Fern, and the packaging for it was just this giant green tin with a huge cow and then a little fern, and then there's a teeny tiny little map, and then it says made in New Zealand. And that was the only reason I knew that New Zealand even existed on the map, is because of this tin of ghee. So when my parents said we're immigrating to New Zealand, I said, oh, the country that produces the ghee that we cook with. And they're like, yeah, that's the one. The one with the cow.
You talk about how it was such a culture shock, because you said New Zealand was chaotic, you were surrounded by family all the time, and all of a sudden you're in Christchurch. What was that transition like for you? I know you spoke of it a little bit, but can you remember being a kid and there you are in New Zealand, uprooted from everything that you had known?
You've seen my family now, you've met them, and you got to see that kind of dynamic. As a child, I was always surrounded by everyone all the time. Like, I go to school, I'm surrounded by a huge circle of friends, and then I come back home and then I'm surrounded by my family. And in the weekends, we were always either at my grandmother's side, my grandmother from my mum's side, or my grandmother from my dad's side, and everyone from our family. All of a sudden, being in New Zealand, it is incredibly quiet. And we also moved to Christchurch, which is a very quiet city. It's not as, there's a little bit less hustle and bustle that exists in Auckland, which is in the North Island. So Christchurch was fairly quiet. And the first few months, I really struggled to fall asleep at night because it was so quiet. I would knock on my parents' door at night and say, it is so quiet. I'm used to sleeping in loud places. I mean, in Cairo, where we were, our apartment building, I'm just used to some kind of noise outside, cars honking, I don't know, the neighbors laughing, or some loud TV, I don't know. And all of a sudden in New Zealand, there's just so much space, and we had a house with a garden, and it was very beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it, but it was just a huge shock, especially the quiet and the serene. So that took me a while to get used to. And then obviously the language factor. The language was a huge thing for me. We'd only just started to learn English at the school where I went, Sacré-Cœur, where we learned everything in French and Arabic. And then English was introduced sort of just about a year or so before we moved to New Zealand. And so I had very basic English. I had very good grammar, next to no vocabulary. So that didn't really help me because I couldn't really express much. And although I now speak with a Kiwi accent and I can obviously understand it, at the time, New Zealand accents are hard to understand, man. I was like, holy heck. I would have to ask people to repeat themselves several times just for me to understand what on earth they were saying. So yeah, those are all things contributed to sort of me feeling, just a little bit out of my depth, not really knowing what the heck is going on. It took me quite a while to adjust.
And your parents were understandably protective. I think I told you I wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers either because my parents, it's just not what you do in Korea. And they'd say, you have your own bed. Why would you sleep over there? Like, just come home.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you said that by joining these music groups, it gave people an opportunity to, first of all, for you to have some sanctioned things to go out of the house and do. And also they got to see who you were and your personality began to blossom. I wonder what would have happened if you didn't have that musical talent and the musical outlet.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think that was my only, I don't want to say my only escape. I think, I feel like when I speak to some of my colleagues who were born in one country and then grew up in another, or just when I speak to my fellow Arab friends that I, became friends with and have become essentially part of my family in New Zealand, I think we all go through the same struggles. You just always, you lose a little bit of sense of identity. I was really lost. I didn't know if I was fully Egyptian or if I was fully a New Zealander. And it put me in this space, and especially, when you're a teenager, you don't know any better. You're still, you don't have yourself figured out. Your personality is still developing. You're not at, you haven't reached that moment where you know truly who you are at your core. And I just felt really lost. At home, I'm supposed to be strictly 100% Egyptian. And at school, I'm supposed to be somewhat of a New Zealander, of a Kiwi, to kind of fit in, with my surroundings. And I was really trying to find a balance or to find a middle ground. And I struggled. I was always seeing the school counselor in my high school for that reason, because I wasn't very happy, and it made me incredibly sad not to feel like I sort of belonged anywhere, like I didn't really fully fit in. And I don't know what I would have done without those music activities that I ended up, being involved in. I'm grateful for my school, for my music teacher at the time, Mr. Langdon. I asked him if I could have some cello lessons because I really wanted to learn how to play the cello. And he just looked at me and goes, no way, you needed to have been playing a string instrument, from a much younger age. But I need a trombone player to join the orchestra. So if you can show me that you pick up the trombone in a week and play in the orchestra, then I will see what I can do about getting you some cello lessons. Suffice to say, I never ended up touching a cello in my entire 5 years of high school because he straight up lied. But I did learn the trombone, and because I learned the trombone, I was able to play in the orchestra, in the concert band, in the jazz band. And in terms of singing, I joined both choirs, the choir that you had to audition for and the one that you didn't have to audition for. Anyone can do it. And I joined the barbershop quartet. We weren't particularly very good, but I did it anyway. Basically any musical activity that any extracurricular activity that I could join in high school, I was there. My voice teacher in high school also had a jazz choir. Sorry, my dog has decided to be a security dog for the evening. My voice teacher in high school was classically trained, but also loved jazz. And so she introduced me to jazz. And she said, hey, I have this jazz choir that I take. You know, they're all much older than you. You'll be the youngest one. But if you'd like to join, you're more than welcome. And she wasn't wrong. I think they were all either in their late 40s and, 50s and up. And here I was, some, 16, 17-year-old in a jazz choir. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just loved being surrounded by people. And through music, I could be always surrounded by people.
Well, despite what music was for you and how it was a key into many things, I know you said that you studied physics, biology, chemistry, calculus, and that the fun subjects were music and French. So you enrolled to study engineering and then were miserable. So you didn't last very long as an engineering major. Can you talk about that and how you switched to music?
When I was finishing high school, my parents, I sort of hinted that maybe I would want to do music. I want to explore singing, being a singer. At the time, I didn't know what kind of singer. I did not already know at the time, definitely opera, definitely jazz, contemporary musical theater, what have you. I just thought I would like to sing. I would like to be a singer. And my parents, definitely my mum, straight off the bat, absolutely no, this is not going to be a path that you are going to take. And you took all these subjects in school, the chemistry, the physics, the calculus, the biology, all those things. You're going to pursue science. You can do a Bachelor of Science. You could do medicine. You could do pharmacy. You could do engineering. Or if you'd like, you can do commerce. My uncle runs a bank in Egypt very successfully, and she goes, you can do a Bachelor of Commerce and then go back to Egypt and have a job just like that. Your uncle will take care of you. And that to me was my worst nightmare. So I was like, absolutely not, we're not going in this direction. So then for whatever reason I was like, okay, let's go with engineering then. I don't know what I was thinking, but I went ahead and applied. And my first semester was just a nightmare. I had no motivation to continue to go to these lectures. I was there every day. I was, passing my exams and doing the labs and all the things, but my heart was not in it. I could never see myself actually graduating and doing that for a job. And I pulled out, did not tell my parents what was going on. I just said, I'm going to take a semester break and go to Egypt. But I didn't officially tell them that I dropped out of that specific degree. And for them, the concept of sort of taking a gap year, as we call it in New Zealand, that's a very foreign thing. In Egypt, we don't do such a thing as a gap year while I figure out what I want to do with my life. That does not exist. You go straight from high school to university and you just go bang, bang, bang. And here I was. I just said, I'm just going to take a gap semester and then come back and continue. But in fact, what I had done, I had dropped out. I went to Egypt to stay with my extended family there, primarily with my grandma and my uncle. And there is where I got my uncle to call my parents over Skype. And then he broke the news to them, because what I had done prior to leaving is I went and auditioned for the music school at the University of Canterbury. And I said, I want to major in voice. And I just did an audition for them and they took me in, but they said, hey, you can't start halfway through the year. You have to wait until the next academic year. And so I just spent 6 months in Cairo trying to figure out how on earth I was going to tell my parents that I was about to do this. And I got my uncle to sort of be the front for me in the battle. And he did that for me. He spoke to them on my behalf and said, this is what she has to do. This is what she needs to do for her to be happy. And if she's happy and passionate about something, there's a much higher chance of her being successful at it. And I'm very grateful that he stood up for me in that moment.
Yeah. And it's a kind of a wonderful thing that you and Penne, PJ, as you call him, could do a lot of that journey together, since you had met in New Zealand and went to Cardiff together and San Francisco. And the hour is flying by. So I just want to say that if people have questions, they can put them in the Q&A so that we can have Amina field some of your burning questions. Talking about San Francisco Opera, I know it was kind of very formative for you to see how a big opera company worked, and you had gone to San Francisco Conservatory and then gone to San Francisco Opera. But I feel like the way you talk about it really is your artistic home, even though you sing so much, you know, in France and other places.
I just feel so connected to it. You know, it does feel very much like my artistic home. I feel very connected to San Francisco Opera in particular, because I feel that's where I really grew as an artist, or really started to sort of understand who I was as an artist. I was learning so much about my voice. I was learning so much about the business. I was learning so much about literally everything that has to do with this job. I feel like I learned the basics throughout my time there as an Adler Fellow. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, truly.
That was a question from Frank Fradella, who was asking about that transition. And also he asks if there was a big operatic leap that manifested then, that you can say, and he adds that he loves you. We love you.
What do you mean by big operatic?
I guess it must be if there's just a moment or something that you got through the Adler Fellowship Program, or maybe one of the big roles you got to do while being an Adler that kind of catapulted you. That's my interpretation of his question.
Well, honestly,
it's a gradual thing.
I can't pinpoint one specific thing, but right off the bat, my very first assignment at San Francisco Opera was in Carmen, funnily enough, because that's the opera that I'm currently now. My very first assignment was singing Frasquita in the San Francisco Opera production of the Calixto Vieto production. And I had the absolute best time. They could not have possibly given me a better first assignment. You know, that version of Frasquita is wacky. She's drunk, she's loose, and she's just having the time of her life throughout the entire show. And we had two fabulous Carmens, and I got to be particularly close with the fabulous Irene Roberts, who was one of the Carmens. And so I just have nothing but happy and positive memories. And funnily enough, I remember at that time, you know, looking at the score and sort of listening to all of Michaela's parts in the show and thinking, oh, I wonder if my voice will go in that direction one day. So it's nice for me to be sitting here now in Strasbourg and making my role debut in Michaela at Opéra National du Rhin, and just kind of having that connection. But yes, that was probably a very exciting sort of first assignment for me to have. And then everything else was equally as fun and exciting, but it just sort of set the tone, and I think I had good momentum. I have very happy memories from that production.
Yeah. Jeff Englander, to that point, he asks, what roles are you hoping to play in your career? And he wants to know if you still sing jazz, and if you think you could do both opera and jazz in your career.
I mean, if I get signed one day by a record label, should I do the Renee Fleming thing and have a little bit of jazz going on? have some classical with a side of jazz? Do an album that's a little bit mixed? I don't know. Maybe. I love to sing jazz just kind of in the comfort of my own home, or when I do some concerts with one of my pianist collaborators, Ronnie Michael Greenberg. Sometimes we will do some sort of jazzy numbers at the end. But I don't know if I'll do it professionally. And I already forgot what was the second half of that question. Roles, yes, roles that I would like to do. So my dream role was Manon, and I've been very, very lucky to have performed the role already a few times, and I get to do it more times in some amazing opera companies, which just makes me very excited that I was able to fulfill a dream of being able to sing a dream role so soon. And then probably the next one on the list would be Violetta in La Traviata, but again, I get to fulfill those dreams very, very soon, because I'm making my debut as Violetta at Opéra de Limoges in January, actually, and I get to sing it again right after at COC for Canadian Opera Company. So
wonderful.
I'm very lucky that I get to sing those roles that I've always really want, my dream roles, but they're already happening now. I don't have to wait for longer to be able to sing them. So I'm very lucky and very grateful.
You mentioned to me that you would love to do an album of Arabic songs with your uncle. I think that would be fantastic.
Don't you think that would be just hilarious after watching him, how he was during the shoot? If one of us is going to be the diva, it will be him.
Someone had asked, let's see, Bianca D had asked, what made you want to study opera singing?
So when I auditioned for the music school at the University of Canterbury to study singing, I had no idea what kind of vocal training they offered. And then when I started my degree, I realized they only offered classical training, opera or nothing. There was no contemporary musical theater, jazz, whatever. It was just, you either went down the opera route, or you dropped out and didn't do it and went and explored something else. Lucky for me, when I started, I just fell in love with it. For me, it just gave me everything that I needed, sort of singing at this heightened emotion, and plus the acting. So it just combined what I felt like I needed enough to be able to sort of, to express. So I didn't think about it twice. I just fell in love with it and went with it.
Let's have a little look at, I'm going to switch the order, Troy, and let's have a clip of the Bizet, so we can see what it is that you do classically and the piece that will be shared. Can you talk about the choice of the Bizet and why it fits so well in terms of conveying your story?
Sure. Well, the story of the song, Farewell from the Arabian Hostess, it tells the story of this Arab girl in the desert, and she finds this lost man in the desert, and her tribe, they take care of him and look after him. And although it is not specifically written in the music that she is in love with him or that she falls in love with him, it is implied that she does. And it is time for him to leave, and this is her song to bid him farewell. And she's telling him to remember all those times, that she looked after him, and for him to remember her and possibly come back. And for me, the what I think is beautiful in the way that Bizet wrote this music is the da da dum bum bum ba ba bum bum, the accompaniment of the piano. It is heartbeat like, but it's also almost like this sort of mesmerizing beat for a belly dance, which I think is very clever because that is a nod to Arabic culture and Arabic music. But also what he does so cleverly in the end, the last vocal passage, it is entirely on an ah. And in this video, I chose to not sing it strictly classically. I chose to sing it more kind of like how in Arabic music we sing on ah, almost like a cry, because it is at that point where she's bidding him farewell. She doesn't know if she's going to see him again. And it's almost that kind of like heart-wrenching moment. So that is the musical choice that I made. And I feel it just fits perfectly again with just, you know, who I am as an artist and how I grew up, and being able to combine all these aspects, you know, a Western composer writing a Westernized art song that is in French, a language that I connect with, but also has an Arabic storyline and some Arabic influences in the music.
All right, this is just a clip from the second verse. Hard not to let it keep playing, especially the last part that you were saying, where you are just lamenting at the very end. But now that the video is live, everyone can see it. I want to give a shout out to our DP, Bassem El Kashef. The way he framed it was not traditional, and I think very gorgeous, even though, I mean, I know having a camera so close, little,
that was experience.
Yeah, making. And our audio engineer Hamid Sabri also did such a beautiful job. What was it like for you to be the subject of such scrutiny in terms of your story and the music and us following you around and everything, and having these conversations with your family? Because I love where you're sitting on the couch wondering what they're going to say about you. What was that whole experience like?
You know, I've never necessarily done or sort of been the center of a feature like this. So it was a new experience for me for sure. But I loved every second of it. I think it is a little bit nerve-wracking when you're sitting, when I was sitting between, you know, my grandma and my uncle, wondering what on earth was going to come out of their mouths. But at the same time, you know, how could I not be happy? You know, they're just very proud of me, and I'm very happy that they are proud of me, and just want to support me and want to gloat. You know, how could you just not feel loved by that? So I cherished every moment, and I'm really happy to have had that experience, even though I was like, this is so stressful.
Well, Molly McBride, the producer who's on the ground here in New York, and I have joked that you are kind of an amazing producer. A whole other career if you wanted. Attention to detail, planning, you did the translation for the Arabic song. So you have another path open to you at any point.
That means when I retire as an opera singer, I shall have a on the backup, you know.
No time soon. I'm sure everyone watching will be horrified if I encouraged you in that direction in the story.
You get a call from Matt, like, you did what? You
You'd be like, I'm hanging it up now. I should say that, we were helped so mightily on the ground by Orient Productions for Film and Theater. Basma Hamed and Ahmed Al-Attar just navigated all of the niceties of Cairo and pulled together a great crew. And Molly had found Bessem by looking at, I don't know how many Vimeo links to see who might have a real cinematographer eye and a real feel for this kind of music. And so we just luck out sometimes with all of this. We're running short on time. Maria Abadesco wants to know, will you perform in Alexandria, Egypt in 2022?
I would love to. Right now, I don't have that in the cards, but I would absolutely love to. If you have connections, get them to invite me. I'll be there.
Well, Amir, our pianist, is based in Alexandria. He works at the Opera House there, and he also works at the Opera House in Cairo. And I heard from him today, and he loved the feature. So I'm sure if he can collaborate with you again, he'll do it in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat, definitely.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was such a joy to follow you home. And also, when we went to the pyramids, you kept saying, do you want to ride a camel? Do you want to ride a camel? And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a tourist and ride a camel and make you and your cousins wait for me to do that. And then finally you said, well, I want to ride a camel. And so, yeah. So happy that we did it. I knew you rode camels growing up. For me, I did it once in another trip, but this was like a real ride. And Mo and Yusuf are in the end credits of the video because we all were taking a trek on horses or camels. So that was a delight. And our editor, Steve Mallorca, did such a great job with that footage and the whole film. And he's now your huge fan as well.
He did such a beautiful job with everything. So like a huge thank you to him if he's watching this. But also, I would just like to point out that you were so clever, sort of pulling out your iPhone that day that we spent at the pyramids, and you're just like, I'm just gonna take some little clips here and there. You never know what we might use them for. And I'm so happy we were able to actually have those on video because you caught some really great moments.
Well, unexpectedly, it kind of worked. And the slow-mo was a mistake, and yet it perfectly works with the music and the end credits. So there you are. It was a happy accident. Yes. Although I see that you posted the hair flip on your social that didn't make it into the end credits. So everyone go to her social, check that hair flip out. Well, Amina, such a joy, really, and I can't wait to hear you sing live. And now that I know that you're going to be at COC, and it's not that far from New York, maybe I'll hop up and other people can see you.
Visit me.
Yes, everyone come out.
I don't know, but if this somehow extends to the Egyptian community, please reach out to me on my socials, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram. I would really love to build more of a connection with my Arab community and be able to, know where you are, so I can have more, so I can be able to be that point of introduction to them for opera. And if I'm in whichever city that I'm in, I can bring you to one of my shows. So please reach out if you're watching this.
Sounds great. And we'll leave everyone with just the first minute of the actual feature. And then if you haven't watched yet, please go and see the whole thing. Just a beautiful artist that we got to spend time with. So thanks to San Francisco Opera as well.
Thank you, Elena. And thank you to SFO.
أنا كنت عايزة اللي إحنا اتفقنا عليها هنا لما كنا بقول. Growing up as an immigrant, there's a point in time where you feel a little bit torn. You feel kind of stuck in the middle. For me, I felt a little bit stuck between going in the Egyptian direction or the New Zealand direction. I have this question all the time, where is home? And through music, I was able to sort of find some sense of belonging. I could actually belong without it having to be a culture or faith or a nationality. Anybody could play music and partake. So music kind of became my home.